Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Grafana Office Hours. This is number 2 after the first one that I did with Mitch Seaman, who told us all about the overview of the changes that are coming out and that have come out in Grafana 10. I'm Nicole van der Hoeven. I'm a Senior Developer Advocate at Grafana Labs, a company which would not exist if it weren't for our guest today. Torkel Ödegaard. Ödegaard. I'm so sorry.
No
Hur
worries.
mår du?
Hi, I'm doing pretty well.
Jag lär mig svenska. Lite svenska.
Oh, that's good.
Torkel, tell
You
us
did well.
about yourself.
Well, I'm one of the co-founders of Grafana Labs and Grafana, the open source project, kind of started as a hobby project of mine. Now, I think in December this year, it will be 10 years since the project got started.
That is awesome. I think you're kind of downplaying yourself and your your accomplishments just because I don't know, must be a Swedish thing. But literally you created Grafana. So we're all grateful to you for this awesome product and awesome place to work as well.
Thanks.
Tell
No,
us a little bit more about what you do.
well, I do work a lot on Grafana, but yeah, I might have kicked it all off and started it. But yeah, now the Grafana teams are it's a massive team with over 100 people working on Grafana. So, but my role has always been to be as a sort of project manager and as a tech lead, leading mainly the front end work. Like sort of I've done work on the back end in the early days, but last couple of years I focus mainly on the front end architecture, on UX improvements. So I work a lot with the UX team and PM teams as well. But I'm an individual contributor, and I like commit code and work on the main open source project almost daily. Sort of open new pull requests, fix bugs, and work on new stuff that I think will have a big impact, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today, the new kind of dashboard architecture and the scenes framework.
I love that so much. I think one of the best things about working at Grafana Labs is that there are very clear tracks, like the manager track and the IC track, and there is no pressure to go into management unless that's really what you want to do. I think you're a really good example. You're like paving the way for the rest of us. So
Well,
this is
yeah, well,
actually,
I view it mostly as that I get to do a lot of the fun stuff, while a lot of
yeah.
other people that try to get to do a lot of the boring stuff. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah, I
thankful
think
for a lot of other people that are doing other stuff as well.
yeah, it's amazing that you're still as hands-on as you are. This is actually my first time talking to you not in person, but one-on-one. So forgive me if I also want to ask you a little bit about the origin story. Like, why did you even think of creating Grafana? Are you just like that interested in visualizations?
No, I mean it was mainly a scratching kind of an itch that sort of we were using a monitoring tool at the time called Graphite, and I just really fell in love with the power of visualizing the production state of the system that I was working on, like seeing in real time the impact of changes and the behaviors of the system. Uh, that was just super powerful to me, and we were working on continuous delivery and everything that kind of came with that. And I just saw that this is the tool that is going to enable us to really do continuous delivery safely and with good user experience. So the only downside was that it was really hard to use the software. So I just saw a lot of potential in okay, if I can combine the UI of Kibana, for example, which we were using at the time, which had a WYSIWYG kind of build a dashboard in the UI that was pretty good, much better than what the Graphite dashboard had at the time. So I kind of if I can combine this and also add couple of other layers of ease of use improvements, like the query builders and the full screen edit view, I can get dashboarding and metrics and observability much more democratized and much more easy to use, and maybe more people on the team beside me would be more inclined to instrument their applications and build dashboards. So that was kind of the my foray into this space, was just getting more people to be able to use the tools, and solving my own frustration with the tools at the time. I wanted these tools to be more easy to use, more powerful, more visual, and yeah.
I love that you're still doing that now. I feel like you're still the one of the people who says, who addresses pain points in Grafana, even though Grafana has come such a long way from when you first created it. And you've been talking about having more dynamic dashboards for a while. What's the story behind that? Like, what exactly do you mean dynamic dashboards, and why do you think Grafana could be more awesome than it currently is?
Well, I mean, yeah, this is the main motivating factor for me last couple of years, is just seeing that Grafana can be made so much better, can be made to easier to use, look better, and also like behave better, like be more powerful. So I think all those factors have been instrumental in getting me to work on it and motivating me. And also, when it comes to dynamic dashboards, this has been like a dream of mine for almost 5 years, but taking so much long to kind of address other technical concerns, like rewriting a new React architecture and migrating all the visualizations to this new platform. So it's been a long road to get to actually working on the fundamentals of the dashboarding architecture. We have been doing so much more around like query execution and visualizations this past couple of years. So it's really been a 5-year dream of mine to get to rethink how the dashboard architecture work. And a lot of the problems we're trying to solve is these problems we've seen users hit with the current dashboarding kind of limitations. In the sense that you can't really do conditional panels, or you can't really do conditional queries. Like, say you want to have a special query if the time range is really long, or have a different query for a short time range, or hide panels based on some data condition or time range condition. And the other thing that I've also sort of been wanting to do for years is have data-driven layouts. Like, the actual query results should be able to generate the layout. So if you have a query that returns 100 time series, and you want to visualize that with 100 graphs and 100 stat panels, you should be able to do that. Like, today, to do that in the current dashboard architecture requires you to repeat by a variable, but then each panel is going to issue its own query. So it's super inefficient. So having data-driven layouts is also something that I've been super excited to get to do.
So I'm a load tester. I've come from K6, and I know one of the things that I really missed is very often when you run a load test, you have like a baseline run that you're comparing it to, and those are usually on different time ranges because you ran your baseline, like last month or something, and you're comparing something that you just ran. And that one was also difficult to do in Grafana, right? Because as you mentioned, it's just the one time range for everything in the dashboard.
Yeah. No, and supporting multiple time ranges is one thing that is also core to the framework. Supporting query execution kind of on any level. So all the queries could be on the dashboard level, and you can still do what a normal dashboard does. And you can support it also kind of built to support template variables on multiple levels. And the interesting thing there with like the time ranges, or like the test runs, is that it's also developed to be very kind of composable and extendable. So you could, for example, have a new time range picker that, instead of specifying like manually these absolute time ranges or relative time ranges, you can select a test run. So you have a special time picker that fetches data from, say, K6 API to list all the performance benchmark runs that you have, and you get the time ranges from those instead of manually selecting something, selecting a time range. So I think that's one key thing here, is like being able to solve more special use cases is going to be enabled by this framework. And we're working on right now also supporting sort of time shift and being able to sort of visualize this different time ranges in the same graph as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that there was kind of a workaround for this, and the workaround was to build an app. So this is what we did with Grafana Cloud K6, and that's the way that we can have a bit more say and flexibility as to what displays when. And this has been the way that a lot of developers have gone as well, even internally, also with Grafana Kubernetes monitoring, which I just got the chance to try out. It is awesome as well. And it kind of works the same way, right? So what is the problem with just creating apps that have these functionalities?
So the problem that I started seeing is, we started developing these apps that wanted to do more custom things. Like some apps, they shipped normal dashboards, but the dashboards weren't enough. We wanted something more custom and that enable an easy to use user experience that you couldn't do with normal dashboards. That's basically the gist of some of the views we have in Kubernetes app and some work in progress apps. So basically, they have what looks like a dashboard, but more opinionated and more custom and more like doing more kind of dynamic things, like maybe conditionally showing information or joining different results in different ways. So doing more programmatic things. But still, they are very similar to dashboards in that they might have template variables, they might have a time range, they have visualizations, they have a layout of visualizations. And the core plugin framework for Grafana didn't really provide any help there. We have the base components, we have the visualizations, we have a time picker component, and we have like selects, but we don't have any like building a template variable system that syncs with URL or the time range, and having a state system that syncs with URL, and a layout system, and having all these bits actually be hooked up. So when you change the template variable, the query execution kicks in and the visualizations are updated. Or so having these complex parts actually hooked up in a state model requires a lot of code, and each of our plugins started duplicating that. And we were working on the same thing for the new dashboard architecture. So we thought, like, okay, instead of like only focusing on the new dashboard architecture, let's which is going to take time until we can actually replace the core dashboarding experience with it, because we have to be fully compatible, and we have to support the edit mode. There's so many things that has to go into supporting and replacing the core dashboarding architecture with the new framework. So we started, okay, let's focus first on a plugin use case for this framework and really make it extensible, really make it so plugins can get a core dashboarding included in their plugin, but then extend whatever behavior they want to extend and add dynamic things to, or add new components to it. So that's the kind of base idea for turning the dashboard architecture into an application library that Grafana plugins can use in their Grafana plugin pages.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a lot of these app developers who are able to put in that functionality, but we are seeing patterns in that they're re-implementing the same things. Like all of them have similarities that maybe we should be making it easier for them to do. I mean, we are very big on open source at Grafana, right? So the plugin ecosystem is, and the apps as well, that's essential to how awesome Grafana is. Like, Grafana wouldn't be half as awesome if it wasn't as extensible as it is. So we want to make it easier for people to do what they want to do without having to write it all themselves. So what is Scenes?
Yeah, so Scenes is the name of this kind of the dashboard, the new dashboard architecture that we have moved out to a separate library to make it easy to consume from application plugins. So it's a npm kind of Java TypeScript library that is like an extension to the npm and TypeScript libraries we do have already, but it includes new APIs, new components that enable application plugins to basically embed a full dashboard inside their application plugin with template variables, with time ranges, with visualizations and layouts, and some support for drill down pages as well, and tabs. And this kind of can be done mostly declaratively, so with minimal kind of need to hook things up state-wise. So it's a state system and a component system kind of in one. Yeah. So state, you declare the state of what the visualizations you want and what queries you want and what time ranges you want. The cool thing then is that you can add all sorts of dynamic behaviors to that. So to conditionally show part of the dashboard, or dynamically change it based on user actions. You can add buttons to panels, which you obviously cannot do to normal dashboards. And you can add all this kind of programmatic layers to it to come up with a much more dynamic and user-friendly kind of dashboard or data application is what I kind of prefer to call it.
Okay, could you,
I can give a demo
show
if
us?
you, yeah.
Yes, please. By the way, there's a little bit of echo, says Joseph.
Oh, I can try to lower. So let's jump to a demo. So this demo is the same demo I showed in the GrafanaCON keynote last week. So this demo is built mainly to showcase Scenes features or capabilities, not be actually useful. So yeah, we have a Grafana application view with some tabs, and this is the thing that I think is going to be big with normal core dashboards as well. We want to add an option to add tabs to normal dashboards. But you have a template variable, you have a time range, and you have a layout. You have a layout of visualizations. The cool thing here is that you can add a search box here. That this is a programmatic addition, and I have a toggle here as well that completely changes the body of this the body of this dashboard, or scene as we call it. And the cool thing with this whole dashboard is that it's powered by a single query that is defined to repeat a layout with a graph and a stat panel. But this is just a single query returning. It could return 200 graphs, and it would just be show all the graphs. And you can even do search here to filter down what is displayed. So this is just filtering on the already queried data. And here is an example of the new layout that the scene frameworks include. It includes the grid layout that you use in normal dashboards, but it has a new flex layout that can adapt the space that is taken up by each visualization by what other panels are there. And this makes it super easy to do conditional panels, or just like this filtering. So based on how many are shown, there you obviously had constraints as well, like min heights or min widths, so they don't get squished too small. The other key thing to highlight here is that you can have actions to panels, and in this case I've added a drill down link action. So if I click on this, I can go to a drill down view. So this is a completely separate page within the scene application that can have its own sub tab. So this is just looking at logs here for this specific API handler and metrics for this specific handler. And if I were to zoom in here and change the time range, an important thing that the scenes framework kind of helps with and provides is preserving state in the URL as you move between different scene views. So if I go back here, that time range is going to update, and the data is going to be required because the time range changed. So time range is preserved, and if I go here, that time range is still updated. But if I go back to a view I've already visited with the same time range, there's not going to be anything requeried because that data is still there for that time range. And if I go into the same kind of drill down view, there's still no data being required here because the time range is the same and the data can be reused. So we remember the state in a much more efficient way. So this is going to enable so much faster navigation between different dashboards, and also specifically when you organize dashboard in a hierarchy like this, where you have drill down dashboards or drill down views, you can quickly come back to where you were without having to require anything. So it's going to be instantaneous. That is just a pretty clear performance win compared to normal dashboards with many template variables that all need to be requeried when you go back to previous dashboard, for example. Anyway, I want to highlight one more thing here that I think is sort of another form of drill down that I've seen being requested a lot by many customers, many Grafana users over the years, trying to build dashboards that have, say, a table, and when the user clicks on something in the table, they want a new panel to appear or a drill down view to show up. And when they try to build this, they usually have it's always there because you can't have conditional panels in dashboards. But this is super easy to do in this framework, where you can modify the layout, add whatever drill down views you want, and you can also add a remove action here to remove the drill down view. And this is all done with a drill down behavior that manipulates the scene and has the drill down view. And the framework also makes it super easy to make sure that this drill down view is persisted to the URL as well. Anyway, I think this kind of highlights some of the dynamic things and drill down that the scene frameworks enable. Just to highlight another thing, like these tabs can also be data driven. You can have tabs that show some number based on some data query, or you can have the tabs show up only if there is some condition. Like if the service doesn't have any logs, you maybe not want to show the logs tab. Anyway, there's all sorts of dynamic things you can layer on top of this. And you can add whatever new custom panels or custom elements to this as well. Anyway, I think this is enough for this demo.
Yeah, that's a lot already. I think so. My first question is that how there are different tabs now for a single dashboard. Does that have performance implications?
Does the tabs have performance indications, or?
Yes, because you're still having the same amount of data that's just separated into different tabs now. So people might create more and more and more tabs, whereas they might not have put all of them in the same dashboard. Do you think that there's
I mean, the data is not being visualized. The data is not being queried unless you actually activate the tab. It kind of depends on where you place the query runners, because the queries can exist on multiple levels. But normally the queries would be inside the tab, or would live inside the tab definition. So then they would only be executed if you actually open the tab.
Okay, nice. And I know that there was a question actually in the previous office hours about scenes that I said that we would cover. There was someone who wanted to know if there was a possibility of being able to have a series of links, like for different domains, and then depending on which link they click, a different panel or maybe a different tab is put into focus or something like that. Is that something that can be done with scenes?
So yeah, I mean, if you can add all sorts of interactions. So you could have links and buttons that change the layout, conditionally show panels, or conditionally show or switch view. So yeah, that would be pretty easy.
Okay, we have a comment from Dave Pinnock who says, I would love to start using scenes, but I've never created a plugin or know how to code it. I've followed tutorials to create a plugin, but still need to find out how to code a scene somehow.
So yeah, this is kind of a big limitation with this currently, is that to really take advantage of this, you have to be a plugin developer, and you have to get started on an application plugin. We have some scene examples that can get like, and I know the Create plugin tool has a scene starter template, and we have documentation as well for some of the basic functionality. But it helps to know TypeScript and helps to know a little bit about like front-end development, and so the bar is still pretty high for the sort of for who can actually use this and be really do really interesting stuff with it. So we want to sort of long-term explore like how we could enable some of this in a really declarative kind of non sort of plugin way. So you could actually get some of the benefits of conditional panels and these layouts and some of these dynamic behaviors, but still do that in say a JSON format or some kind of more serializable, simple declarative model. But that I think is potentially more than a year away. Like the current goal is to replace the current dashboard structure or a sort of runtime with the scenes framework, and then try to look at how we can enable some of these new kind of layouts and features that the scenes framework enable. And after that, I think we want to look at like how can we enable these dynamic runtime behaviors, but through the kind of persisted dashboard schema model.
Yeah, I will say though that it hasn't been easier to create a plugin than it is now with the latest release, because there are actually a lot of plugins changes, and Torkel mentioned that we now have a create plugin tool, which is kind of like an easier entry into creating plugins in general. So I'm actually going to be talking to or one of our product managers, David Harris, next week about the plugins changes in general. So stay tuned for that. But also, I think if you did want to create an app already, Scenes actually makes it easier, right? Because like you were saying earlier, Torkel, instead of rebuilding everything yourself, you can now just use some elements that Scenes already just, it's like Scenes sets the foundation for you, and you can just reuse those.
Yeah, and it's extremely declarative. Like if you just want the tabs and some dashboard views with with some minimal kind of extra logic, it's like 90%, 99% declarative. You just like define the model, and you can use the normal dashboard to build the visualizations and queries you want, and just copy the relevant JSON model from those panels that you want to include in your scene application.
Okay, are you able to show us some of what that might look like?
Sure, I can show. Let's see. So let's bring in a code window here. Let's see if I'm in the right. No, wrong code window. So let's see if I have a simple one. I can maybe start. So when you develop a scene application, you start you kind of start with a scene app page. That's there's a something on top of that, but this kind of defines the tabs you want the page to have, and then you define kind of the inner body of it is the scene itself, where you have a layout. So this is the kind of new way to position items.
Sorry, would you mind zooming in a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome, thank you.
Better. I can try to do this. So yeah, so we have the layout, and then you can orient those in different ways, columns and layouts, and then you nest them to create more complex layouts. Another benefit here is, to flex layout is that it also is responsive by default, and you have some more control over how responsive it is and in what way. And then we have a way to sort of add visualizations here. We have some builder patterns. You don't need to use them, but they're very new to help you kind of build panels and visualizations and define like query runners, which includes the query model that executes. And so let's see, we have here another layout, and really an interesting part of the framework is that data can live anywhere, and template variables can also live anywhere. So here I kind of placing a query runner on the layout level, which means that I can have multiple visualizations under it that all get the same data. So these two layout items here will all get the same data based on this query. And yeah, so this is kind of the basics of it. Like you define these objects, and here you define a state tree basically. The interesting part here is that you can, like, this state tree that you're defining can be changed at runtime. You can add through an option called behaviors. You can add kind of even to extend the core types with new runtime behaviors. That is maybe a bit more advanced, so maybe not go into that just now. Let's see, anything else that is interesting to show here? Can go back to the index. Look at, so template variables you define through a variable set, and then just define the template variables you want to use. Let's see if there's anything else that is interesting here. Can look at so one of the cool things is that sort of if you want to add a custom element, say a custom input box, you can very easily just build a new component, and a new scene object component. A scene object component is defined by defining some state, in this case a value and an on-change handler, and then a way to render that component. So yeah, that's basically what scene objects are. It's a state model and a React component that renders it. The state model is hierarchical, so it knows its parents and it knows its state in the tree. And that's how we solve a lot of the compositional things and the automatic kind of wiring up of responding to time range change. For example, if a query runner will, knowing where it's in the tree, it will subscribe to the closest time range, and that's how we kind of handle multiple time ranges and in a single scene. Let's see. So here we have a kind of interesting behavior. So we have a show condition behavior. This is a custom behavior that basically just toggles the visibility of this layout object based on some condition. So this is an example of like, this is not provided by the framework, but it's easily something you can develop yourself because the state model kind of enable this extensibility. Yeah, I think this is kind of unless there are specific questions, I can go into more or less detail of how certain things work here.
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of confusion about like applications and plugins from the community Slack, the Grafana community Slack. Gary McGee said that in the scenes presentation, it was clarified that applications are a new type of plugin inside Grafana that host scenes, not freestanding custom applications. Is that right?
Yeah, so by Grafana applications, we mean Grafana app plugins, which are just a form of plugin that lives inside Grafana. So currently, you cannot use scenes in third-party external plugins, or at least third-party applications. The scenes framework relies on the Grafana runtime. This might not always be the case. We are interested in exploring ways where it could have, like where it can depend on a standalone runtime instead. It would still need to query like a Grafana backend and somewhere to load plugins from, because like the scenes framework doesn't include any visualizations, it doesn't include any data sources, so those two must be loaded from the runtime. And loaded, I mean like the actual front-end code to execute those needs to be loaded. So if we had a way to do that sort of in a standalone runtime like that can actually be embedded in third-party applications, we could enable that use case. But currently, you have to do this from a Grafana application plugin, which is basic. And Grafana application plugins enable you to create plugins that add new pages to Grafana, new standalone kind of pages that live in the nav and that you can access.
Okay, another question also from the community Slack from Jamie Milton, who says, is there, I think you kind of touched on this, but is there a roadmap for native support for scenes in dashboards? Just wondering if I spend the time to learn how to do it in a plugin or app to get the behavior we're after, or if the dashboard version is coming soon. So I think they're talking about the fact that right now Scenes is a library for use in creating apps and it's not currently part of the core dashboards in Grafana. Is there a plan to rewrite that so that it uses the Scenes framework?
So yes, I mean the core dashboarding sort of experience. That's our kind of top goal beyond like supporting the plugin use case. Is our top goal now to get as quickly as possible. We have behind a feature toggle. You can load normal dashboards in the scenes framework and get some of the performance benefits. But it's not feature complete. We don't have the edit mode done, and it's missing features like annotations and ad hoc queries. So we're working on making the scenes framework have like feature parity with the current dashboarding. So we can open current dashboards and have 100% compatibility in the same behaviors. And that's going to take some time. There's still a lot of work to do there. Especially like getting the last 5% of getting everything that a dashboard does today. So once that is done, we can explore adding new features that the current dashboard architecture hasn't enabled or has made super hard to do. So conditional panels and better support for drill downs. But that's going to be on a per feature, like, because we have to define a UI for it, how to define it in the UI. We also have to define how to like the persisted model for it. So it's not going to be the same thing as kind of writing a scene application. So like in this work, like we're not going to change the dashboard JSON structure. Like the dashboard JSON structure is still going to be very different from, say, the runtime scene definition, and we'll only make changes to the dashboard schema if we sort of see a need to it, especially if we want to add new kind of layout in options and new features. We need to update the schema definition. So there's gonna still be a sort of there are gonna be different things, like the dashboard definition, like the JSON model and how those work is still gonna be somewhat different from the scenes kind of definition. There are parts that are identical, like everything that deals with visualizations and query models are identical, but everything that deals with like layout of panels and other options is different.
So I guess the answer to Jamie, because they were sort of trying to figure out if they should learn how to use scenes now in an app or if they should just wait. I think the answer is learn how to use it within the app. That would be the fastest way, right?
Yeah. I think it all depends on what idea you have to solve. Like if you have a really interesting kind of unique dynamic thing you want to do in a dashboard that could really like really make it so much more powerful or easy, then I think it would be worth giving it a go to develop that as a scene application. But if it's just like maybe just doing a normal dashboard with maybe getting some of the performance improvements, then maybe it's not worth kind of investing that time. It kind of depends on how much you like sort of coding and developing as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like, what is the difference exactly in terms of, I guess what I'm trying to find out is it going to be backwards compatible? You said at some point we're going to switch it over so that all the dashboards are just going to be built on the scenes framework.
Yeah.
But at that point, will dashboards that were created the old way still work, or will they be completely deprecated?
That's the thing we're working on now, to make sure that all dashboards that have been created up to today still works the same way. So that means basically it should be able to support all those behaviors and features. So including like the template variable system, which we have a much faster, much better template variable system in the scenes framework that we think can have the same behavior of the old one, but much simplified and much faster. And we just need to add support for like ad hoc filtering, which is not done yet, and annotation queries is not done yet as well. So those are the two biggest kind of missing features or missing capabilities that we don't have like a ready solution for in the scenes framework yet. Then we need to just build an edit mode and so you can edit dashboards within the scenes runtime. The edit mode is not going to be part of the scenes framework. It's going to be part of the dashboard kind of. You can almost I want you to view kind of the core dashboards is going to be like a scene application, which loads JSON files and creates a scene from that JSON
that's interesting.
file, and then has an edit mode as well, and it has a save mode. So that's going to be like the core dashboarding experience is going to be like a very very large and feature rich scene application where you can edit and store the scene.
Okay. And we're kind of getting into the challenges that the team faced when developing scenes. I believe it's not just you that was creating this, right? And you mentioned earlier that the being able to save the state and have that be shareable to somebody else through the URL was also a big challenge, right?
Well, I mean, having URL, having state in URL is super important in a data kind of exploration user interface where you can select all sorts of filters and change time range so having a URL that you can share with someone and make sure that returns the same view that you were looking at is very important. But it's architecturally it can be a tricky thing depending on how you do it. So it's important that the framework kind of provides a mechanism to do that easily and have a unified way to synchronize URL state with the scene state. So this is more that is more like a thing that enables the application developers to kind of get that for free without having to spend a lot of effort on making sure that it is the case.
Okay, and to be clear, you're not talking about the public dashboards. You're just talking about the URL.
No, I mean just making sure that if you change the template variable and time range, and then you share that URL, it should have that template variable value and time range. And if you develop as a scene app plugin developer, develop a custom plugin, a custom component that has some user choice or selection, it should be easy to kind of hook into that URL sync system, and that's kind of what the framework also provides. It doesn't just provide URL sync for the built-in kind of components like time range and template variables. It also enables any custom object to also say, hi, I have state I want to synchronize to the URL.
Okay. We have a question here from Vivek Krai. Please tell me, is it possible to build a non-time series dashboard with an Elasticsearch data source? I don't have to apply a time filter in my query. I don't think that this is really scenes related, though.
No. Yeah, I think that the Elasticsearch data source requires a time range on all queries. But yeah, if you don't want to have a time filter, you could just set a very large time range. So if you want to have query all your logs without any time filter. But like it's more like an Elasticsearch data source query.
So I don't know if you mentioned earlier that scenes can also do custom actions, I believe.
Yep.
And maybe that's related to this next question from Zivo.
Yeah.
How can we trigger a shell script based on an alert?
So this is also kind of not scenes related. So I mean, if you have defined a Grafana alert rule, you can specify a custom webhook to fire based on when that alert rule fires, and then that webhook will trigger a shell script somewhere. So
Okay.
at least that's how I assume you would do that.
A question from Data from the community Slack. Is Grafana Scenes already documented somewhere?
Yes. So if you go to that GitHub URL that I think was up on the screens a moment ago, that GitHub repo has links to documentation and some examples as well. So this the reason we're documenting this probably better than a lot of other things we have done in the past is that this is such a core platform now for internal teams at Grafana Labs. And obviously we want to empower the community as well by having kind of ready documentation and guides for this.
And I believe that some internal apps are already being developed using scenes.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, you will see. I think most of the apps that are coming or are in development are using scenes or trying to convert what they have built to this framework. And the thing that I'm excited about there is not only to kind of save a lot of duplicate, sort of remove a lot of code duplication, but also to add a lot of UX consistency to to these scene applications, these applications that have so far kind of had to reinvent the wheel in slightly different ways, creating subtle kind of UX differences. And this framework, I hope, should give UX consistency while also enable some kind of experimentation and kind of new. Every scene app can have some new elements as well, but the base should be kind of similar. That the time range picker and variables work the same and are placed the same, and the visualizations and visualization containers all look the same, and the layouts work the same.
Okay. And how do you think that Scenes is related to this initiative, which was mentioned, I believe, in GrafanaCON, Grafana As Code?
So no, I think there is a connection, like, but the As Code work has mostly focused on programmatic definition of the core dashboard of the persisted dashboard schema models. So it's another form of dynamic kind of dashboard, in that you have a usually in some of the As Code examples, you have as form of template or script that is building the JSON model dynamically. But this is mainly to kind of have more control and consistency across many dashboards, and you can reuse elements that sort of Grafana doesn't have a reusable element for. So you can have like shared queries and shared visualization settings between many dashboards, because the dashboards are defined through these small templatized fragments. But it's all kind of ending up in JSON blobs that then get saved to Grafana database and its normal dashboards. So that's at least how we're approaching the As Code story right now, is that it's a different form of defining many dashboards in a more kind of maintainable way. Also maybe empowering, like storing them in Git and having them synced to Grafana and having more controlled ways of updating dashboards. So that's the As Code story as it is today. While this is a plugin developer story where you're developing a data application.
Okay.
But there is an intersection in terms of like how you define the queries and the visualization settings is using the same schema model. So they have they have the same source in terms of query model and visualization model, but that's kind of it. So at least today.
All right. And you already talked about one of your future plans for Scenes, which is that the team plans to move the current dashboards into the Scenes framework and have it be backwards compatible. Anything else that you can share? Or maybe even if they're not official plans, but if they're just like things that you would like to see?
Well, I think when we get to that point, like the scenes framework is powering current dashboards. I obviously want to move on to add that. Then we can add features that have been requested for a long time to core dashboards. And the thing that I just having played with these scene applications that I want to add right away would be tab layouts, because I think tab layouts have really strong advantages compared to, say, the rows. That is the way you can break up a large dashboard right now, is to have collapsible rows. I think tabs have a lot, is a lot more user friendly to enable you to break up a large dashboard into separate views. And I also want to kind of look at how we can kind of organize dashboards and make drill down sort of better. So you can sort of create a hierarchy and clearly delineate, like, this is a drill down dashboard, and kind of promote a variable to be the drill down kind of state. So you can then actually sort of navigate the exact same way you could, as I showed in that scene application, where you clicked on, say, like some detail view, like a handler detail view, and you go into drill down view. You can get the exact same behavior in a core dashboard and just click the breadcrumb to find your way back to the previous dashboard. to the kind of parent dashboard. So a way to organize dashboards in a hierarchy, specifically as it relates to drill downs. I think this is not the same thing as like organizing dashboards in a hierarchical folder structure. That's a separate thing. This is like actually organizing dashboards in a hierarchy that relates to kind of drill down and actual state that you preserve as you go deeper into a hierarchy. So that would be kind of interesting, I think, to kind of replicate the same drill down and breadcrumb navigation. I think other things after that would be finding a way to do conditional panels, and then like figuring out how we can expose the new flex layouts. That those are much harder, not only from like figuring out the persisted model, but also figuring out the UI to edit and define a dashboard with a flex layout is a lot harder than the grid layout that we have today.
Have you thought about the possibility of bringing scenes functionality to the end user and letting them create scenes through the UI?
Yeah, no, so that's really long term, like really long term goal is to rethink potentially the dashboard edit mode, and also the persist, like have a way to define a more dynamic, almost like an application editor, to define like a hierarchical scene and add queries on different levels, and really like enable them to define like layouts that can be repeated based on query results, and add all sorts of buttons and interactions. Like there is a future where we can do like have more of a data application builder UI, but yeah, I think that is pretty far away, because it's just so much work to do that. But it's a fun kind of thing to think about.
Okay, question from Marcel Weinberg, also community Slack. Did I get it correct that Grafana Scenes is already used under the hood and one could start to play around with it? I'm aware that it's not in the state where you want to actually release it yet. But there are three parts to that, right? Grafana Scenes is not used under the hood for current core dashboards, although that is the plan. But one can start to play around with it already. And that's by developing apps that use the Scenes framework. It's all developed in the open on GitHub like we normally do. And it is already in the state where it is released. We have released it and it is usable. Did I get that right?
Yeah, no, it's released. I think it's like, you could call it like a preview beta phase or something. Like we are super eager for feedback, and it is used in small places in Grafana. I think if we have one place where we actually use it in Grafana, in the Get Help inspector, where we kind of wanted to embed a small help dashboard that can help you troubleshoot issues with your panels. But that's the only place, I think, in core Grafana where we're using it. But we are using it in plugins in Grafana, on the Grafana Cloud already. But beyond those, we are not using it in the core kind of dashboarding experience.
All right. Thank you so much, Torkel. We're coming up on the hour now. Just as a final thing, what can people do if they just want to get started with scenes right now? Where would you direct them?
To the GitHub repo and the documentation site. I think it has some. So I think the project readme might have some links as well to what sort of using the create plugin tool to get you started with a kind of scene application starter plugin template.
Is that also the best place to, report bugs or feature requests or anything like that?
No, that's definitely the best place to report bugs and other feedback.
Awesome. And in case you missed it, not Torkel, but everybody else, we just had GrafanaCON last week, where there was well, Torkel did speak about scenes as well, but that, I believe that was in the keynote. And then there was a separate talk by Dominic Prokop and Bogdan Matei, and they also demonstrated scenes there. If you missed it, you can still catch it. You can stream those videos on demand at this link. You can just go and do a search for GrafanaCon 2023, and you'll find all of the sessions that are on there. Now, Scenes is one of the new features that are available to plugin developers now as of Grafana 10. And I'm going to be talking to David Harris next week on the next Grafana Office Hours. And we're going to be discussing how the plugin experience has changed and what you need to know if you're a plugin developer or a plugin user as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Torkel, for also coming on and talking about this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, this was great.
All right. Have a good rest of your week, everyone.